And then, there's red light. Yes, John, I've started recording. Yay. Okay, then I guess I can be off. I'm a little nervous, and even though it's a small group of us, forgive me if I forget anything or make any mistakes. All right, on behalf of BELTA, I want to welcome you all. So, as I said, the first Sundays with BELTA series of the new year. Now, before we're going to move on to the incredible webinar waiting for us, I've got a couple of things to say about BELTA and our upcoming events. Now, as some of you might know, BELTA is the Belgian English Language Teachers Association, and our main aim is to get English teachers on track with their professional development. We've been doing that for some years now, and we're hoping to keep doing it as long as we can. One of the things that we strive to do in order to help teachers develop themselves professionally is BELTA Day. Now, BELTA Day or something will be on the 11th of May 2019. The theme is going to be language learning focusing on success. We've got a great plenary speaker lined up, Eowyn Chrisfield, and we'll be giving a talk about translanguaging. We, of course, encourage everybody to send in a proposal to speak on BELTA Day itself. The call for proposals is open and will stay open until the. So we encourage you to send in your proposals and to share your successes with us. Of course, we also have the BELTA Day, the very first one of the new season, and it will be presented by Tetiana. Tetiana is an old familiar. She was actually with us during the last BELTA Day, and she did an incredibly well-received session on circle games. And today she's going to tell us a lot of exciting things about minding the gap. Tetiana, if you could join us, that'd be great. Tetiana has been an English teacher for over 16 years now. She is from the Ukraine, and right now you're teaching in Germany. And it's a next hers to share with everything. Tetiana, you
Thank you, yeah.
Yes. All right, we've got the first. All right, I wish you the best of luck.
Pleasure.
See you soon.
So happy
All right.
to be with you today. I'm going to like join and I hope also all doing great evening in countries. Well, so hello everyone joining me from Belgium, Germany, Ukraine, and without further ado, let's go to the agenda of today's webinar. So first of all, so the name of the webinar is Mind Gap, and as you get by the description, it's about the information gap activities and everything that is connected with the gap that you create with the class. And first of all, we will look at what is an information gap activity. So we will try to give a definition. Then we will look at the important features, characteristic features of an information gap. Next, we will look at some examples and practical variations of an information gap. How you can use them in your own classmates, depending on what level you teach and what classmates you have. We'll discuss some advantages and challenges of introducing information activities into your classroom. Well, so now, I would like to share with you some moment of revelation which I had. So while preparing for this webinar, I remember this moment actually of revelation brought about by this simple task that my students, career English Alliance students, had to do. That was a display exercise in which students needed to practice their past simple tense, this grammar. So they got this text and they were supposed to change it by using simple. And of course, you can guess that I got their responses like from all of my students. I got responses like on a typical working day. I responded. So yes, I responded to emails. I spoke to clients. We discussed the client's name and so on. But then I got this answer from one of my students who did not what was expected of him to do. So as you can see here, so I just highlighted there are digressions and instances in this answer. For example, here he had instead of writing, I responded to emails, I spoke to clients, he said he invented emails. It was so boring. And he spoke to clients from day to day over and over again. That was also not supposed by the text. Then he said it was an ordinary scheduled event with any new ideas, no profit. And then this part about food at lunch. Instead of writing, we had lunch at around 1:30. My colleagues and I bought something from the food provider. The food provider brought potatoes. Again, Jamie hated potatoes, but there was a part that made my day actually. So if you could go back to the original text, the rest of the day goes in delivering the products and updating the status with the clients. I also received calls from our global team and so on. Here you can read, he had to ride the bike and deliver some medical hardware, one mask, bandages, and even some bottles for analysis. It was so uncomfortable to answer his global team calls while riding the road. Finally, he saw that 2 breaks with colleagues were the things yesterday. So, well, yes, so as you can see, these students had some creative approach to doing his home task. And he had not only made my day, but also made me think that with his smart and answer, he created a space he revealed a little bit of his personality, and he created a space for humor, creativity, his life experience. And I thought, what could I do as a teacher to get the same response from all of my students? And of course, the answer was that it was my task as a teacher to create this gap, to modify this activity in such a way that all of us had this, gap for communication, for authentic exchange of information, and so on. Well, now that brings us to the next part, in which I would like you, and I would like us together to identify what an activity is really. So, planning a lesson is actually planning lots of activities that our students, or tasks that our students perform during the lesson. I would say an activity is a building brick to all the lesson, and being able to plan it, a good activity, to set it up, and to understand as a good teaching skill is a key teaching skill, I would say. So now I'd like you to, before I ask you to take part in a poll question. This is our working definition of what an activity is, and it's taken from James Previner Guide for Teachers, Learning and Teaching. So an activity is something that learners do that involves them using or working with the language to achieve some specific outcome. Well, I will do this. Yeah, put up a poll, and I would like you to participate here and answer the question. So which of the following is not an activity, do you think? Well, A, learners play a regular game to help them learn new words. Learners read an article to prepare for discussion. Learners listen to the teacher explaining the use of the present perfect. And finally, learners repeat sentences a teacher says in order to improve their pronunciation. So now, please participate in this poll and choose an answer of which of the following you think is not an activity. Well, yeah, okay. So it looks like we've got an answer here, right? Thank you. As I said that I should, sorry, I will need to turn off my. Yeah. Okay. So now it looks like we've done with the participation, and absolutely everyone had the answer C. Learners listen to a teacher explaining the use of present perfect. Right. So now from the definition we can see Rihanna. I just skip away. Thank you. Well. Now, obviously, yes, task C is not a task or an activity, actually, because although it involves some to understand the use of grammar point that the teacher is explaining, but there is a danger that they will be not actively engaged during the process of teacher explanation. Well, now before giving, I'll roll it over. Okay, now before giving a definition what an information gap activity is, let's look at the examples of these two activities. Now, activity A. Continue the sentences about yourself. For example, you present this activity to your students. They need to continue the sentence about themselves, and you suggest this one. For example, I have never, if I say this year, I rather than. So now, supposedly, they will need to complete these sentences using in the first sentence present perfect to describe their experience. In the second one, some conditional sentence, and this will be a real conditional sentence. If I say money, I will, so they will share the realistic outcomes. And then number 3, I would rather than, so they will practice their would rather plus infinitive without to. This is one activity, and now activity B is formulated like that. What is shown in the picture, and then you present your student this picture. Now my question is, when you look at these two activities, and now I ask you please write your comment in the chat box. So when you look at these activities, both of them contain a gap. But my question is, which activity do you think has more potential for exchange and for discussion? So activity A, in which students are asked to fill the sentence about themselves, to continue the sentence about themselves, or activity B. So my question is, which activity offers more potential for discussion? Absolutely. So I love that activity B. Thank you. Well, it seems like we are all on the same page here. Now, yes, activity B, I think that activity B offers more potential for discussion too, because students can be more creative while doing this activity. For example, in activity A, students will supposedly be working individually, completing these sentences, and then maybe they will share their answers in pairs or then with the whole class. But there is one option in which you can make this activity A, more potentially discussable, so to say. Well, so I would say, for example, my suggestion is how we can turn this activity A into more productive for communication. Let's say you ask your students to complete the sentences not about themselves, but about their partner. So it doesn't matter if they know each other very well or not. There will still be some space for humor, for exchange, for personality, for authentic and real motivated communication. And that way, you really create a gap. So when you change activities, well, that brings us to the next step, in which I will very briefly give you a couple of definitions. First of all, what is a gap? A gap, how we see it in our English language teaching environment. So a gap is a piece of missing information needed to complete activity. So a brief definition of what an information gap activity is. And I suggest that information gap activity is specially organized classroom task that requires students to interact in order to exchange or discover missing information. So this is what we understand today under information gap activity. Well, so now let's this is the slide where I will ask you to put in the next poll to answer the question: what do you think is the most important characteristic of an information gap activity? Yeah. So please look through these 4 options and come up with one of them. So A, it increases student working time. B, it enhances student motivation. C, it encourages education. And D, it develops critical thinking skills and teamwork. So now you need to come up with an option. Most important characteristic of an information gap activity. Well, okay. So as you see, for clear and most important activities it is very I'm happy because now we have this and now let's see what activity can take. Here I suggest a kind of classification. I roughly classify it into 5 that will be then comes okay. Well, because and that is when you repeat. So this is the boundary between these groups. They overlap, but this classification will help me to go through main points that I would like to cover in the webinar, and I hope it will help you. Well, Karen will go back to this feature at the end of your own teaching. Okay, so now let's call the first one the group which I call pictorial prompts. And what we see that we all read have for discussing and to exchange. Also, while doing this activity, you present this picture or any picture that hides something on this picture, and you ask students to work in pairs and discuss their ideas of what they think is hidden in this picture. And to help your students, to help your students go easy, you prepare some questions. What is the element caring? What are the relationships between animals? What had happened before the photo was taken, and what happened next? So you can organize discussion of the picture in a pyramid discussion technique. So they discuss these questions in pairs and share information. Then they are grouped in groups of 4, so 2 together, and they need to come up with a single story. And finally, they work in groups of 8. So these 4 and 4 together, and now these new groups in this group of 8, they will need to come to a consensus. And so they will need to come to consensus and can present their single story. Someone asks if I give some leading questions first. Well, of course, but the activity itself is a leading in. Well, so we show the picture. You might ask what you see in the picture to revise vocabulary, to use examples for discussion. But I think that itself this is a leading in discussion. Well, so now when you discuss this, all these, so they need to present their single story in groups of 8, for example. So your students will definitely be more well, they've been so they work in pairs, then they have worked in 4s, then they have worked in 8, needed to persuade each other, needed to communicate, needed to describe. So they will actually have more skills and more confidence to present to be ready. And you saw the original picture. After I show you the original picture, I'm very curious about what you think. Now one second, I have a question. Of course, that's a good, very interesting. Well, then you might ask that the relationship are romantic, yeah, from it. Yeah, great. So thank you. Really is. So now I can, while we are typing, I just want to add that it should be lined up for all of you to see. It should be two candidates that okay, so let me finish my idea first. So this should be very tricky and contain something really interesting and motivating for students to want them to discuss it. Of course, the teacher might write down some key and answer to question. So that will really and how you get a relationship. Well, and the other you can see before you get it, like it up, and actually before you get the lesson today. Yeah. So and I told you that it's supposed to be activity that shouldn't take too much of your lesson time, because if you have like 45-minute lesson and this discussion will take 20 minutes of your time, that is not good, because you will not then have time to cover all the materials that you need during your lesson. So now the other suggestions, parents, all friends, yes, society, the roles of men and women in society, that was an idea. You can get one picture, you can hear so many topics, and your students, while doing this activity, information activity, they will be well motivated and engaged with any field that you will I hope you agree with me that they will be interested in participating further in the classroom. Well, thank you so much for your ideas, and now we will move to the rest of these forms. So what are the picture? So in this video, each of them something that is in the picture, and the student there needs to come up with 4 things about his object, to help other students guess what it is. So now while I'm explaining further or giving details about this activity, will you please type in your chat box what do you think is zoomed here. Pepper. Great. Yeah. Uh, so now I should explain it a little bit once again. So this is something that both of partners can see, a zoomed picture. Both me now playing student A and you playing student B, we both can see this picture. Only me, it's me who can see its original, the original variation. And it's me who prepares four prompts for you, to understand what's hidden here. Dental picture or human gum. Yeah, great, fantastic. Part of a garden furniture. Okay, now let me make your life easier now. And now, so what have I prepared as a prompt for you? So it's a world-renowned, it's a world-famous brand. And if your partner doesn't know or hesitates, you give another explanation. Its name refers to two of its original ingredients. Well, okay, still no ideas. Ron, you know every single answer to my question. You know all the answers to my question. Yeah, it's protocol, Ada, perfectly. Well, so now you know now how it works. Obviously, this activity is aimed at practicing students' writing skills, reductive skills, writing skills, but also listening skills. Because that's Coca-Cola. Because the partner should listen to instructions carefully, to sentences carefully, and here I think that here they need to exercise their critical skills and creative skills. I mean, the student who is writing their prompts, the student who is trying to understand what is that. Well, and now I can say that you can easily find these pictures when you Google zoomed in pictures, and there are lots of materials that you can come up with to fit every learning topic or level of your students or their level of preparedness. Well, so now and again, students would be motivated, so students would be eager to follow you on whatever activity you will suggest next. Well, so now, while that brings us to the next slide, to the next pictorial prompt activity, which I call Q&A, and this activity is aimed at developing students both productive and receptive skills, and it involves pair work. And it involves not pair work, but in this activity you can divide your big class, whatever big it is, whatever size it is, you can divide it into two. And in this activity you need to find a very creative and so I would say a picture with a twist, and divide students, as I said, into two groups, Group A and Group B. And now Group A will write statements about this picture, and Group B will write answers about this picture. And now let's try how it works. You will now be Group A, those writing statements, and I will Group B, those writing answers. So, and while you're typing your statements about this picture, I would like to add some comments how you should introduce and set up this activity. So it's a good idea when you ask the students to be creative with their statements or answers, and not write obvious and display questions or statements like she's swimming or it's a playground. So encourage or motivate them to be really creative and think about what is hidden, what is implied, or some information which is not here, like what is the woman's age, if she has got grandchildren, and so on and so on. Well, so try to encourage you to be really creative with their statements or questions. So now let's look what ideas you have. Where is it taking place? Yeah. Okay. So, okay. So you are the group that are supposed to write statements about this picture, and I am the group that is supposed to write questions. Yeah. You, Karen, you write statements. Sorry, I didn't. I wasn't clear with my instructions. You see, instruction is key in language classroom, and it's always a good idea to stop even in the middle of the activity and check if students will understand what they are supposed to do. Yeah. So now you need to come up with statements about this picture. So now actually. I allow students some time, of course, and they will work in groups, and they brainstorm the ideas, and they need to come up with really good 10 questions and 10 answers. These are the statements. You're never too old. Karen, thank you. There is a child in all of us. Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Ron, this grandma is wearing her best dress. Well, great. Yeah. Well, so we will wait a little bit. and then friends forever. Yeah, so thank you. Well, okay, so now, and the next step, what you do with this activity is that you tell your students that now they are going to work in a class, in a whole class. So what they are supposed to do, friends, no matter what people think, have fun in life. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your great ideas. That's fantastic. But now, the next step, as I said, now you need, you tell your students that now they are going to work as a whole class. And that means that one group, those who were writing questions, should read their questions one at a time, and the group that was engaged in the statement should find a statement to make the question. So, well, now let's see how it works. So these are the 5 questions that group B have prepared. Where did it work? Well, how long has she been swimming? What are they gossiping about? Who has taken this photo? Well, so it seems like it's difficult right now to match your answers with my question, but this is what happens usually in the classroom. And then students start to be really creative with this matching. They say, for example, let's pick up. Okay, this grandma is wearing the best dress. Now, your students might say that this is a good answer to the question where did she used to work, because this is the dress, so she used to be an accountant, and there was a dress code at her work, and this is something that she always wore on Friday or when her boss had birthday. So now this gap between the answer and the question should really sparkle some really good and funny conversations and discussions between students. And if you add an element of competition, you are sure to come up with some unexpected results. Well, so now if you allow me, I will move further. And that brings us to the next activity, which is a staple information gap activity in a classroom. Now, this is how it works. Your students get 2 pictures. One of them, they need to identify the difference between the 2 pictures. Well, so now to make sure that this activity has a real information gap, that this is a real information gap activities, you should not allow your students to look each other's pictures. Well, so and then they need to, in pairs, they need to ask questions, both general and special questions, or they can make even predictions about each other's pictures to find the difference between them. So let's try to see how it works here. For example, you see this picture, and the task is, this is now your picture, you see your picture, and you know that my picture looks the same, but you want to find out what differences I have in my picture, so you need to come up with any questions or predictions or ideas that will help you identify in what way my picture is different from your picture. Well, so, and while you are typing, I'm going through the chat box to try to catch up with the questions or comments that you have here. Well, is there a bad bald man? Ada, thank you. Question is a bald man who is reading a newspaper? Yeah. A dog? Is there a dog in my picture? And I will say yes. And then suppose the next question will be, where is your dog? It's okay. Then I will answer, or is your dog behind the sofa? I say no. And then you will ask me another question to find out, is the girl on the floor doing her homework? I would say yes. And then you will want maybe to ask some more specific question. Is she writing? Is she lying on the floor? Is there a copybook or something around her? How many pictures are there? Wall? Yeah, great. Yeah. So it seems like you can pay attention to any detail, and I hope your students do. So it gives pretty much space for discussion, for asking questions, and exchanging. Well, so there are 5 people in the picture. Yes. Okay. Now, without ado, I will go my picture now. Yes. And thank you for your great suggestions. Yes, there is something to discuss about the dog who is not in the place in my picture as it is in your picture. Yes, Ada, there is something about the man who is not bald in my picture, and yes, there is something about the girl who is doing her homework, but there is some detail that is different in my picture. Now, I'm just going to suggest to give you some ideas of how you can personalize this activity and make it more authentic and more interesting for your students to put it in. And this is the question of using mobile phone in the classroom. And this is great. Teachers may argue with me and say, no, smartphones, there is no place for phones in an English class, but this is how you can creatively use your students' smartphone and their precious photos in the classroom. So now, this is how you can find the difference activity into making it more personal and authentic. So now you can ask your students to pick up a photo in a photo gallery in their smartphone, and without showing it to each other, they should communicate about their picture and find out if there are any differences or maybe similarities between their two images. You don't tell students how they do that, so they need to develop the strategy themselves. So whether they will be asking questions, whether they will be making predictions, it doesn't matter. But the most important thing is that at the end, they should identify the difference. Now, to make it easier for your students to do this activity, you may you may specify the task. For example, you can ask them to pick a photo with them, or any photo which is taken outside, or with them doing sports, or with them hanging out with friends, and you are sure to have some common things in the picture or differences. Yeah. Now, I think it's with another slide. Well, and this is part that brings us to the part where students need to draw a picture themselves. And a typical exercise in which students draw something is called picture dictation. So this is when students draw the picture, and then they describe the picture to the partner who needs to draw this picture, and then they compare the differences. Well, so now I suggest, so this is my variation of doing this, I mean of drawing, and the activity that I want to demonstrate or to present you right now is called personality pie chart. So in this activity, students get these paper circles, and they need to divide their paper circles into slices and draw something on the slide, on each like pie on each slice. So you need to tell your students that their picture should tell something. So that could be like an encoded information about themselves. So they should mean something. The picture should tell something about their hobbies, or something about their dreams and bad experiences. And so now this is how their pictures can look like. So in the middle, you can see the name of the person, and then the pie is divided into 4 slices, and there is a picture in each of the slices. Okay. Well, so now. And again, don't tell students how they are going to elicit information from each other. The most important thing is that by the end of the day, they will need to be able to tell about the person. And you can organize the activity again in pairs or in mingle. And you will give, by organizing it as a mingle activity, you give chance to students to communicate with more than one person and get to know more and more information about each other. And now when you look at this student, Tanya, you could probably understand that she... So what kind of information, maybe I will ask that as a question, what kind of information can you elicit from this picture? By looking at this pie chart, personality pie chart, what kind of information can you get? What can you know about Tanya? Well, so now while you are typing, I can say that personality pie chart activity is an icebreaker. It's a good icebreaker. Well, and that... at the end, well, so it's important that they remember the information that they listen, because at the end you will collect all these pie charts, all these circles in one box, and then you will draw these circles one at a time, and you will ask your students to tell something about the person which is here in the center, whose name is here in the center. Well, now let's go to our chart. You have your brilliant ideas. She plays the guitar, wants to be a doctor. Yeah, she likes cycling. Or she is studying to be a doctor. Well, yeah, Ada, actually, yes, you're right. that were supposed to be earphones, and it says that Tanya does not only read books, she also likes listen to audiobooks, and she always does that when she cycles to school or when she goes to school by bus. Well, reading and music, well, great. She went on holiday to an exotic island, yeah, or maybe it's her dream. She hasn't been on an exotic island yet, but it's her dream. She wants to go there one day. Well. Thank you. As you see, this gap, so the gap which is created by a picture could be a good starting point for discussion, for exchanging personality things, and for using the vocabulary that you need them to use, for revising the vocabulary, or maybe preparing them for some other reading or listening activity. Or it can be just a good icebreaker activity that will help to create a positive atmosphere in your classroom and get your students, make your students more relaxed when presenting their ideas. Well, now as I said, at the end of this activity, you will draw these circles one by one, and you will ask your students to present. And this is what is the most difficult part of a lesson, getting students speaking in public. Well, so I'm pretty aware that it's in every classroom there are students who are afraid or are not willing to speak in front of others, and the reason why is pretty obvious. They are shy, or they are not confident, or they think that like they are evaluated, and they do not want to make mistakes in front of the whole class. And here we come to another big group of information gap activities, which I call jigsaw. And reading is in brackets here because it cannot only be a reading exercise. Well, so now um, I'm, I'm pretty sure that you are familiar with this exercise, but let me just cover some points here. A jigsaw reading is a good activity which aims at improving not only your students' reading skills, but also speaking, listening, communicating, problem solving, and so on. So what you need is to choose a proper grade and text and divide it into paragraphs. And obviously, you will need to have a text with the same number of paragraphs that are the number of students in the group. For example, in my example, this is in Utopia, of course. You have 9 students in your classroom, and you have 3 groups of 3 people. Now, it means that you need to divide your text into 3 paragraphs. Paragraph A, the first paragraph you will label A, then the second paragraph you will label B, and then the third paragraph you will label C. And now you divide your students into groups A, B, and C, and your students end up working with the same paragraph in the so-called expert group. Okay, well, so now how it works, you make a copies in this case of each text, and you cut the paragraphs, and you give these paragraphs to students, and they, in their expert groups, they review the same material, they read through and find some main ideas of this paragraph and arguments to support. So they discuss together, and then they become real experts in their paragraphs. And then you regroup up in their so-called home groups. And now you have the 3 groups, but with the different students who have read all the 3 paragraphs. They come together and they again share information about something they read. So they've become more confident by that time because they've gone through the material, their content, the vocabulary, and information in their expert groups, and now they are pretty confident to share what they've learned in their new group. And it's a good idea when the activity doesn't end here. So you need to come up with something else. For example, in these groups, the students need to write an end to a story, or they need to make some project or some illustration or fill in the grid that will help them learn this material, and then they will present their project, or they will speak into the whole class and present what they've come up with in these new groups. And now I'm pretty sure that by this time your students will feel more confident to speak because they've had a chance to go through vocabulary and material and content in their expert groups, and they get really confident by now. Well, so now this is how you can organize a jigsaw with difference. Instead of cut text into paragraphs, I suggest that cut your text vertically or horizontally, so that your students end up with having not a paragraph, complete paragraph, a text, but they will have only a piece or fragment of information. And I think that by doing that, you could create even more space for discussion, both in the home and expert groups. Now, if you please take a look at this part of the text, which like fragment of the text, which you take from Matrix Pre-Intermediate Student book by Cassie Guide and Michael Duckworth. So the topic was about languages and dying languages. So this is what students get, for example, in their experts. Now, while working with that, they need to find answers to these questions. So let's now see if it's too difficult for your students. So just go through this fragment and think, yeah. Well, so now it's just we have the answer to some questions: natural disasters, enjoyable places, cultures, great. This is the reason why languages die. Yeah, great. Population growing, yes. And now what can people do? So people need time and money to save the language, to try to train teachers. Well. Okay, it seems like even if you cut the text not in paragraphs but diagonally or vertically or horizontally, so it seems like your students can can elicit some information from the text and add their own ideas. And this is what I did with my Ukrainian language future teachers. So they needed to work in groups and to find out this information and then come up with the project. They needed to answer the question, what should be the, if Ukrainian language is really in danger of disappearing, what should politicians, teachers, and society do to keep it? And now my idea is that when students work in these home and expert groups, so these groups could be looked at like a seedbed for a variety of opinions and ideas. Because if you ask a very complex and debatable question to the whole class, when you throw this question to a whole class, you will end up with a silence, and then you will need to answer this question yourself. But this jigsaw activity will probably increase students' talking time. It will allow all the students to have their voice, and it will enhance their knowledge of the topic because they will discuss it in their individual groups, expert groups, and then they will become more confident when they present their ideas to their home groups. Well, now what level of English? So they were a 2-year student of Ukrainian teachers of Ukrainian and English, and the level was a really mixed group. It was like from pre-intermediate to upper intermediate, and this is something that we should face. So this is a reality, actually, maybe in every classroom. So it was a really mixed ability classroom. But anyway, so this is really good because whatever their level is, so they still have something to say about this topic, for example, a burning topic, a very interesting topic for linguist students about languages disappearing. So this is something they have learned in their linguistic lessons, for example. If they have something to say, but in the lesson they will need to express it in English. So and here when your help, I mean, teachers' help is needed when they want to express some really good idea, but they don't know how to express it in English. This is where you can pop up and help them. Well, or for example, in their expert groups, they can elaborate. They can in these expert groups they can get prepared for the talk or for the discussion for the project that they will need to accomplish later in the later stages of the lesson or in further lessons in your curriculum. Well, it brings us to the next group, the group which I announced in the beginning, and that is called greets. And well, with greets, you will not have as much space for real speaking, but greets is a good kind of information gap activities that will provide, that will give your students an opportunity to revise and recycle and repeat the same vocabulary and grammar over and over again without being too boring. Well, so now the first activity that I would like to present or demonstrate is called concepts and notes, or in an ELT context, it's known as. The idea is very simple. There are players, or maybe two teams of players. One part playing the part of crosses, and another playing the part of notes. And the idea is to mark all the spaces in the grid so that then you can make a line horizontally, vertically, or diagonally to be a winner. So now let's look at how it can it looks in an English language environment. So now you can press irregular past simple here, for example. What you need to do is to fill in the spaces in the grid with infinitive forms of the verbs. And now, and then students take turns to pick up a verb or to pick up a space in the grid and provide and give a sentence in which they should use past simple of the verb. So they need not only to give the past simple of the irregular verb, but they need to come up with a sentence. And if the sentence is correct, then students can put a cross or a note depending on which part they are playing. And this is a very good exercise. A group exercise. You can play it with the whole class, or you can divide it into smaller groups, like 2 and 2 people playing against each other. Because it's a competition, students will correct each other and they say, no, you cannot place your not here because the sentence is not correct, what order is not correct, or the infinitive or the past form is not correct. Now, the variations that you can use here is, for example, instead of irregular forms or irregular verbs, you can practice irregular forms of nouns or adverbs of frequency, or, for example, verbs followed by gerund or infinitive, like you write here, decide, involve, enjoy, and then you will come up with something. She decided to go to a party, or she enjoyed listening to music. So students will need to form their sentences accordingly. So what else? There are some great suggestions. 4 in a row. Yeah, Ada, thank you. Yeah, so, okay, so I will just not, it seems like you are all activity, but my idea was to show that grid is a real information gap, because they need to fill the gap, and they fill it with something that, some information that other students don't know. So that will be really interesting. And this is how you can involve speaking into grids instead of some grammar. You write some topics that you will need, you want to revise with the students, and by picking up some topics, students will need to talk for 30 seconds without pausing or repetitions, and then if they are successful, they can put their cross or not. Okay, let's move on. And there is another old pen and paper game, which can be well exploited in your language teaching content. It's called Battleship, where students, you know, the rules, they are pretty much the same, irrespective of culture and generation, and some other things that yeah. Okay, so now battleships, normally it's a game where students choose some need to locate their ships on the map, and then they need to identify the location of the enemy ships by saying aloud the coordinates of the ship and how when you miss, you put a cross on your enemy's map, and if you miss, you put a circle, and now you know where you need it. Now, how can you play this game in an ELT context? So let's say you want to practice questions in different tenses. You place here. You place horizontal, you place different verbs, and horizontal you place the verbs, and vertically you place the name of the people. For example, your sheep, your partner will ask a question like, can you see your ears? And you should answer yes. And when you answer yes, then the person marks a cross on his on his map. Now, this exercise, as I said, to practice grammar and vocabulary, and here you can ask students to ask questions in some particular tense, only in present or continuous, or only in present simple. Of course, this is a drilling exercise, so students repeat the same pattern, the same question over and over again. But I'm sure they will not be bored because they are concerned not with the language but with the game itself, and they want to compete. They get competitive, and they get motivated and really engaged. Well, now. This is, let's move on to the next kind of activity of the kind. It's also a grid activity because it will require students to fill in some grids, and this activity is called Scheme, Scan, Run, and was described by Karen McCoy, Regional English Language Officer, and the description was published in an article in an English teaching forum published by the U.S. Department of State. And at the end, I will provide the link to this article and some other at the website where you can download this forum journal absolutely for free. Well, so now in this activity, students also work in pairs, in groups, and they will need to find the information, some missing information in the text that are posted all around the classroom on the wall. It's just a usual activity, but done with a difference, so that it can break their sitting mode of the students and make them cooperate, participate together in groups, and move around. Well, so the idea is that each of the groups get a list of questions or some grids that they will need to fill in, and to do that, they will go to their text and locate the information, find the information, and go back to their home group and fill in. So write the answer. The challenge here is that students cannot take their sheets of paper with them while they go through the reading. So the paper should really stay at the desk in their home groups. So now you can add even more challenge here by setting a time limit, so that your students should come up with all the questions or all their charts, all the spaces in the grid in 10 minutes. And when the time is out, your students go back to their home base, and then they go through all the questions or all the spaces in the grid, and if there is something they do not agree, they go back then to the text, they locate the information, they find it, they read it, and then they choose the best answer. Well, so now it again, so connected with the gap, there is a list of questions that students need to answer, and there are text. I need to say here, for example, this picture that you can see here, these are the students of English Access Microscholarship Program in Ukraine. So they are all teenagers and aged 13, 15. And the lesson topic was ethics. So I connected 5 texts of different genre. So we had a piece of ad about theme parks, then a blog post, then an infographics, a journal from the article, and then they should find this different information to answer the question they had on that. You can see that. Well, then we discussed their ideas together as a class, and next they need to make a project of their own. So to create a theme park that they think would attract the customer, they needed to describe the function, how it worked, the price, the opening hours, and everything. So by the time they needed to create the project, they had enough information because they were working in groups, finding, locating different kinds of information on the text that was posted on the wall. Well, okay, so I'll move another big group, which I call conversations. And what happens in this like big group of activities, as the name suggests, students need to work with cards and have a conversation as well. Well, so now a typical example of a conversation is a role play where a student gets the description of their role, and then in groups of 4, up to 4, this is an optimal, an ideal number to communicate. They just have a conversation depending on their role, and turn this conversation role play into a real gap activity. You can do the following. You can give a student a secret color card, with each color meaning some different approach to the situation. For example, if your student gets a white white card, it means that this student is a nerd and he or she can approach the situation from this point of view. If a student gets a green color, it means that the student is like a creative person and full of ideas, suggesting everything, new ideas. If it's a black card, then it's an pessimist, for example. If it's a yellow card, the person is an optimist. And students working in groups of 5, for example, they are all aware that there are different personality types in their groups, and they just make a conversation according to their role cards, and at the end of the activity they need to identify who was a nerd, who was an optimist, who was a creative person, who was an emotional person, for example. So this activity is based on the Bono technique 5 or 6 thinking hats. Well, and this is how you can implement this idea into making your conversation or role play into a real information gap activity. Now let's look at other examples of conversation. The next one is called My Thing. Well, and in this activity, students work in groups, again, groups of 4, and each of their students gets a card with a different topic. So it could be, for example, weather, celebrity, sports, food. So these are the topics that you've already covered in your curriculum, so the modules of the chapter, or the chapters, so the topics from the modules of chapters in your book that the students have already covered. They are confident of these topics. So what happens here is that every student gets a different topic, and they come up with ideas. So what they will say about it. So give them some time to think it over, maybe to make some notes, and then the conversation starts. And everyone should turn the conversation into their topic, into his or her topic. So, well, it could be, your students could have much fun while doing that, because, for example, one student starting with, I went to a restaurant yesterday and I ordered a pizza. I ordered vegetarian pizza, but it was not a vegetarian pizza because there was some meat in it. And then another student interrupts and, with her topic says, yeah, I see, but I went to that restaurant and I met someone famous. And now the challenge here is that they shouldn't name their topic. So they should speak about the topic without naming it. So if they have, let's say, celebrity, they do not have to say a celebrity in their conversation. So, and at the end of the activity, again, students will need to guess who had which topic. Well, so now, with doing an activity this way, students again have more space for communication, for discussion. They know the topic, they know what to say, because first give them some time, or next they've covered this topic in a curriculum before, previous to this activity. So, and it's a good revision exercise with a meaning and purpose and fun. So, and activity of this kind, conversation type of information gap activity, is called with degree, which is a variation that I described before. And in this activity, students have the same topic, preferably some not topic, but it is discussable, very problematic question to solve, like who is Are women better drivers than men, for example, or is fast food always bad food, and so on. And but in this case, students need before they take their turn to speak, they need to take a card with a functional language in it. And of course, prior to this activity, you will need to go through this functional language, in that of giving advice, expressing your opinion, agreeing, disagreeing. So activities should be preceded by a revision of this functional language, and it would be a good idea if these cards will be written by the students themselves. So they work in groups, they write this functional language on the cards, then you select, mix them, and in their new groups they start a conversation. They start a question, but they draw the card, and they need to start their utterance with that is written here. And of course, it could be quite unexpected when students, for example, one student agrees that women are actually better drivers than men and give their arguments. Then the next student who wants to agree, he draws a card, and here he or she reads, "I totally disagree with you." And students need to be flexible and to change and adapt their answer accordingly. Well, so now you might ask a question of the level of the students. Again, this could be based on something that students already read, so they know, they have some ideas already, they've read something, they've listened to some text, they covered a lot of, they researched the internet, and when they come to this activity, they should have some ideas and vocabulary to spread their ideas. So now this is the final group of information gap activities that I call mingle. It's a mingle activity. Where students are in a whole class, and the idea is that each student should move in a class to approach another, to speak to another. They work simultaneously in pairs or in small groups, and from partner to partner while speaking, listening, and taking notes. Well, of course, as a teacher, you cannot control what is happening there in your group, but as I said before, your students will feel relaxed and comfortable without the teacher supervising them and without being watched, and they will not be afraid of making mistakes while revising the content of vocabulary or grammar. And now you see this picture. It was taken on the 28th of May 2016. Ukraine attempted at breaking the world record for the largest English language lesson in the world, and the participants learned the phrase, the pattern "would rather." So you see them actively practicing this pattern, but before they learned how to form the sentences with "would rather," and you can see here the students and ages and supposedly completely different level and preparedness, but it didn't matter. So in this activity, they were actively participating, and yeah, that was a real gap activity. And I would say it was not an information, it was an experience and personal, and yeah, so not an information gap, but experience gap and personality exercise. Now this is how you can make your mingle more organized. You can do it in a circle, in moving circles. So supposedly you understand how it works. So you divide your groups, your students into two groups. Group A, which forms in a circle, then group B, which forms their outer circle, and then they face the partner, they face each other, and they need to communicate in pairs. And then after the signal, after some time, let's say 30 seconds or more, depending on what activity they are supposed to do in pairs, you signal them to move, make one step back, and to a group with another like this. For example, students move right. Okay. Well, so now I think that in legal activities organized in moving circle give an opportunity for your students to talk to more students than usual. What I mean is that there is always in a classroom a situation when students communicate only in small groups. So they sit together and they stick together, and they do not in these little groups, and they do not want to communicate outside the little groups, especially teenagers, whatever reason they can give for that. But in organizing moving circles like that, you give a chance to communicate with everyone. Well, so now and here you can the activity, the information gap could be a very simple one, like find someone who to conducting interviews and polls. For example, you have a topic, food and drink. Your students have gone through lots of material, listening, reading. They are pretty comfortable with their language, with content. They have ideas, and they have worked in groups and developed some interview poll questions. And now in these moving circles, in this mingle activity, they actually conduct their interview. They ask their question polls. They make notes, and then they get back to their home groups, and they come up with a project with infographics, and then create something that really describes the interests and habits, eating habits of the group. Okay, so another variation of organizing discussion in a mingle activity is four corners, and I claim that here we also are faced with an information, with a gap, not information, but opinion gap. And what happens here is that you place a statement or some question, no, a statement, and then your students should move to different corners. And that will signify a possible question. So the heading will depend on how much we they've done that, they can move to another direction. Well, having said that, let's check out how it looks like, how it works. And this is my statement. Students learn nothing if they are not engaged in an informal activity. So will you please respond in a poll? Rihanna, this is our third poll. Thank you. So the question is: students learn nothing when they are not engaged in an information gap activity. Well, so it looks like we have a space for discussion, and that is really great. So of course you will need to formulate your statement in such a way that you do not want all your students to appear in one corner. Then there will be never a space for discussion and exchange. And here, if you were in one classroom, we would have 3 students standing in one corner who strongly agree. Now 4, 2 students who somewhat agree, and 2 students who still disagree. Well, so that is great. So what happens next is that we have discussion. You give your arguments. You present your students present their arguments, and then they have they can persuade each other to change their opinion or not. Well, thank you, Ariana. Well, that brings us to the final part, where I would speak about advantages and challenges of an information gap activity. Let's start with advantages first, and maybe challenges that will be our unquestioned part. Okay, so well, as you saw, for example, students actually, while doing information gap activity, students actually collaborate with their classmates because they need to achieve the activity goal, and the teacher's job is only to facilitate the activity. And of course, and by doing that, you will increase student talking time, and the teacher's voice will be only heard when the students really need some help. Students in an information gap activity, students communicate for a purpose, so they have a meaningful reason to communicate. So information gap activities involve pair work, as we saw, small groups discussions, and it changes a little bit the dynamics of the lesson. While communicating in pairs or in groups, students become expert on the question, and that is really motivating. And with the authentic communication, I mean students get so teachers can develop the materials in such a way that it meets students' interests and needs, and also information gap activities can be designed to incorporate authentic material, like I said, maps or infographics or blog posts. And finally, information gap activity encourage teamwork, because students need to collaborate to come up with a solution or to reach a consensus or to win in a competitive game. And of course, it develops critical thinking and problem-solving games. So in the second post where I asked you about the characteristic feature, you see that all of that are characteristic feature of a good, well-planned, well-organized, set up, and run an information gap activity. Well, so now, given all that, I think that it's a good idea never to underestimate the power of information gap activity to create all these conditions for our students to speak, to exchange, to show their personality, and so please never mind the gap. Well, so this is so much I want to tell, and these are the resources that I used while preparing for this webinar, and I would like to give them a credit. And well, now I just took up too much of your time, more than I planned, and I'm sorry for that, for taking time out of your busy teaching lives. But I'm so happy that you joined us today, and I hope some fresh ideas and insights of what you can do in the live classroom on Monday, that is tomorrow.
It is. All right, Tetiana, I want to thank you so much. You did go over time a little bit, but I think it was really worth it because your ideas are wonderful, and I know that I made loads of notes that I can use in my classroom tomorrow, and I think I speak all of us if I tell you that it was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for doing this. All right, Tetiana, don't go anywhere. I'll be right back with you, yeah? But I'm going to say a few closing words first if people want to leave. Yes? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming to the webinar. I think we can all agree that Tetiana gave us an amazing presentation, which will be posted on the BELTA site eventually, Ron, so we will take care of that. Next up, the next webinar will be in 2 weeks, and we'll have an equally amazing speaker, Edmund Dudley, who will present his ideas for the teenage classroom using selfies, airplane mode, and memes. Once more, I'd like to turn your attention to our BELTA and mention again that our call for proposals is open. We would love to have your input. All right, people, thank you so much for sticking with us until the very end. I'm going to close the recording now and take some private time to thank Tetiana for her amazing contribution. All right, guys, have a great Sunday, and I hope to see you again in 2 weeks.